even movies that have coherence, like interesting movies and tell jokes. So it's quite remarkable how fast AI is advancing at many companies besides Tesla. We're headed for a very interesting future. And yeah, so you guys want to comment on that?
Yeah, I guess the Optimus robot can come up with physical art, not just digital art. You can ask for some dance moves in text or voice, and then you can produce those in the future. So it's a lot of physical art, not just digital art.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Computers can absolutely make physical art. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, like dance,
sure.
Play soccer, or what have you. I mean, it needs to get more agile, but over time, for sure.
Thanks so much for the presentation. For the Tesla Autopilot slides, I noticed that the models that you were using were heavily motivated by language models. And I was wondering what the history of that was and how much of an improvement it gave. I thought that was a really interesting, curious choice to use language models for the lane transitioning.
So there's sort of two aspects for why we transitioned to language modeling. So the first...
Talk loud and close.
Okay.
It's not coming through very clearly.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so the language models help us in two ways. The first way is that it lets us predict lanes that we couldn't have otherwise. As Ashok mentioned earlier, basically when we predicted lanes in sort of a dense 3D fashion, you can only model certain kinds of lanes, but we want to get those crisscrossing connections inside of intersections. It's just not possible to do that without making it a graph prediction. If you try to do this with dense segmentation, it just doesn't work. Also, the lane prediction is a multimodal problem. Sometimes you just don't have sufficient visual information to know precisely how things look on the other side of the intersection. So you need a method that can generalize and produce coherent predictions. You don't want to be predicting 2 lanes and 3 lanes at the same time. You want to commit to one, and a generative model like these language models provides that.
Hi. My name is Giovanni. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. It's really nice. I have a question for FSD team. So for the neural networks, how do you test, how do you do unit tests, software unit tests on that? Like, do you have like a bunch, or I don't know, maybe thousands or cases where the neural network that after you train it, you have to pass it before you release it as a product, right? What's your software unit testing strategies for this, basically?
Yeah, glad you asked. There's like a series of tests that we have defined, starting from unit tests for the software itself, but then for the neural network models, we have VIP sets defined where you can define. If you just have a large test set, that's not enough. What we find, we need like sophisticated VIP sets for different failure modes, and then we curate them and grow them over the time of the product. So over the years, we have like hundreds of thousands of examples where we have been failing in the past that we have curated. And so for any new model, we test against the entire history of these failures and then keep adding to this test set. On top of this, we have shadow modes where we ship these models in silent to the car, and we get data back on where they are failing or succeeding. And there's an extensive QA program. It's very hard to ship a regression. There's like 9 levels of filters before it hits customers, but then we have really good infra to make this all efficient.
And I'm one of the QA testers, so I QA the car.
Yeah,
like
QA tester.
Yeah, so I'm constantly in the car just being QAing like whatever the latest alpha build is that doesn't totally crash.
Yeah. Finds a lot of bugs.
Yeah.
Hi, great event. I have a question about foundational models for autonomous driving. We have all seen that big models that really can, when you scale up with data and model parameter, right, from GPT-3 to Palm, it can actually now do reasoning. Do you see that is essential scaling up foundational models with data and size, and then at least you can get a teacher model, right, that potentially can solve all the problems, and then you distill to a student model. Is that how you see foundational models relevant for autonomous driving?
That's quite similar to our auto labeling model. So we don't just have models that run in the car. We train models that are entirely offline, that are like extremely large, that can't run in real time on the car. So we just run those offline on our servers, producing really good labels that can then train the online networks. So that's one form of distillation of these teacher-student models. In terms of foundation models, we are building some really, really large data sets that are multiple petabytes. And we are seeing that some of these tasks work really well when we have these large data sets. Like the kinematics, like I mentioned, video in, all the kinematics out of all the objects, and up to the fourth derivative. And people thought we couldn't do detection with cameras. I mean, detection, depth, velocity, acceleration. And imagine how precise these have to be for these higher order derivatives to be accurate. And this all comes from these kind of large data sets and large models. So we're seeing the equivalent of foundation models in our own way for geometry and kinematics and things like those. You want to add anything, John?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. Basically, whenever we train on a larger data set, we see big... OK. Basically, whenever we train on a larger data set, we see big improvements in our model performance. And basically, whenever we initialize our networks with some pre-training step from some other auxiliary task, we basically see improvements. The self-supervised or supervised with large data sets both help a lot.
Hi. So at the beginning, Elon said that Tesla was potentially interested in building artificial general intelligence systems. Given the potentially transformative impact of a technology like that, it seems prudent to invest in technical AGI safety expertise specifically. I know Tesla does a lot of technical narrow AI safety research. I was curious if Tesla was intending to try to build expertise in technical artificial general intelligence safety specifically.
Well, if it starts looking like we're going to be making a significant contribution to artificial general intelligence, then we'll for sure invest in safety. I'm a big believer in AI safety. I think there should be an AI sort of regulatory authority at the government level, just as there is a regulatory authority for anything that affects public safety. So we have a regulatory authority for aircraft and cars and sort of food and drugs. And because they affect public safety, and AI also affects public safety. So I think, and this is not really something that government, I think, understands yet, but I think there should be a referee that is ensuring or trying to ensure public safety for AGI. And if you think of what are the elements that are necessary to create AGI?